Can you see me? You can see me. Yeah. Good morning. We're going to get started, so if you want to grab your coffee and snacks or settle down. This is weird. That's weird. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Brown. I'm the Executive Director for the Wentworth Watershed Association, and I'm thrilled to welcome everyone to the 8th Annual Water Summit. Can't believe this is the 8th one. On behalf of the Wentworth Watershed Association, I'm proud to welcome you to this community event. The fact that we're gathered here for the 8th summit is a testament to the importance of collaboration and partnership in creating meaningful change and lasting impact for lakes and watersheds. Protecting water is not something any one organization can accomplish alone. It takes dedicated partnerships among local lake associations, the town of Wolfeboro, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, the New Hampshire Department of Transportation, and engaged community members like you. Together, we're working towards a shared goal: protecting the health of all 7 water bodies in Wolfeboro. That work takes many forms. It includes improving stormwater regulations, cleaning and maintaining storm drains, reducing road salts, evaluating watershed conditions, and reviewing management practices, such as the dam operations that we reviewed this year to ensure future decisions are informed by sound science and data. Today's program is designed to share information, celebrate progress, and empower action. Action is the key word. You will hear from Laura Deemer from FB Environmental about the findings and recommendations from the Wentworth Crescent Watershed Management Plan update, and learn practical steps that you can take on your own property to protect water quality and become part of the solution. We are also pleased to welcome Jason Ayotte from New Hampshire Department of Transportation, who will provide updates on the South Main Street project with a focus on stormwater management during the important infrastructure improvement. Stormwater from South Main Street affects Russ Pond, Crescent Lake, Wolfeboro Bay, and Lake Winnipesaukee. So this project is especially significant to all of the watersheds in town. Following Laura and Jason's presentations, we'll take a short break. During that time, I encourage you to visit our merchandise table, pick up the hot off the press, just as of yesterday, printed brand new Wentworth Crescent maps. They were made over the last 2 years by Sam Simpson, who is the employee who's now moved to Fish and Game, but she had a background in GIS in collaboration with a lot of people in the community to review it. So this is a brand new state-of-the-art map, and I encourage you to buy one for your boat. So following Laura and Jason's presentations, we'll take a short break, and then we're going to then connect with other lake associations who will have an opportunity to share updates. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that events like this are made possible through the support of our members, sponsors, and donors. Your membership and annual fund contributions allow us to provide educational programs, watershed protective initiatives, and community engagement opportunities throughout the year. If you are not already a member, I encourage you to give where you live and support the work of the Wentworth Watershed Association, the Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance, Russ Pond Association, Mirror Lake Association, and the State Organization of New Hampshire Lakes. We are all working together as partners, and your dollars help. I would also like to extend a special thanks to our underwriters, PD Zimmerman, the Wolfeboro Fund, and our season sponsor, DF Richard Energy, and our event sponsors, Wolfeboro Waters Committee, Baldwin Excavation, Belknap Landscaping, Lovering Tree Care, Mal Blodgett, Mirror Lake Protective Association, Russ Pond Association, Camp Bernadette, and Pierce Camp Birchmont. Thank you as well to our partners at Wolfeboro Community Television for broadcasting today's event, which you can live stream. Hello to everybody out in the Isthmus, as well as review portions of this event later for reference. In particular, I'd like to recognize our event volunteers. Thank you to my family members who showed up to help set things up, as well as the volunteers, and especially Don Crutchmer for being our moderator today. Thank you all for being here and for your commitment to protecting the waters that are the defining characteristics of the oldest resort town in America. Together, we can ensure that these lakes remain healthy and vibrant for generations to come. Now, let's get started and bring Dawn on up. They're over at the table, and I can grab them.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. It seems like not that long ago, but that we were here for the first Water Summit, which was actually 2017. I looked it up, and so we've made a lot of progress. We missed a couple of years because of COVID and so forth, but so happy to have everybody here, still engaged. And honestly, I think we have probably about as many people here as we had at the beginning, and that shows that there's still a lot of interest in kind of what we have going on in terms of water resources. So a couple of things that we covered in the past, and a lot of the materials from past water summits is available on the Wentworth Watershed website. But we talked about local watershed issues in the first water summit. We've had UNH come a number of times to talk about water quality monitoring, stormwater, to talk about cyanobacteria, to talk about climate change and how those things may affect our local water resources. DES has come a couple times and spoke with us about road salt, about statewide lake trends, how we compare to other lakes around the state, and what the state is doing for statewide initiatives. We've had a number of sort of kickoff planning sessions on specific things that are really important to the sort of the lake community and watershed management. One of them being kind of landscaping by the water's edge, another one being septic systems, another one being camp road maintenance. And what we used is this forum to sort of kick off the idea, and then we had specialized spin-off forums to go in detail on how you might manage a camp road, how you might design a septic system, how you might plant your shoreline so that it's lake friendly. We also did another session on natural shoreline buffers and how important those were to lake water quality, waterfowl management, and a bunch of other factors like that. I'm going to try to keep us moving along today. There are cards available, and they're going to be passed around. If you have questions for any of the speakers or for any of the panelists afterwards, put them on the cards. We'll sort them out at the break and make sure that they get asked to the extent that we have time for them. If we have time after each speaker, we'll try to entertain a couple of questions as well, but we kind of want to get everything addressed. I was trying to think of a kind of a general overarching comment that could sort of summarize where we're at and kind of what our challenge is going forward. And I went from very esoteric, deep thoughts to the simplest one of all, and that's the one I landed on. And basically the concept is we are all standing in the same pool of water. And what we do affects everybody else in the pool. It doesn't matter what shore you're on, what side you're on, how deep you are. If you're in the pool or your water drains to the pool, you're affecting everybody else. And we need to be really mindful of what we do and how that affects everybody in the pool. And I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday morning, the last time it was calm, our pool still reflects. Anyway, this is not a political discussion by any means. It doesn't matter what your politics are, we're all in the same pool. Anyway, our first speaker today is Laura Deemer. and I've had the pleasure of working with Laura for about 10 years now. She's a certified lake manager with FB Environmental. She is a really, really competent scientist, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work with her. And she's followed on with a lot of the projects that I had before I recently retired, and is doing a great job with those. And anyway, Laura, she's going to talk about the Wentworth and Crescent Lake Watershed Management Plan, which is now completed, and she's going to tell us what she found.
All right. Excellent, great. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes? All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you, Don, so much for that kind introduction. And thank you all so much for being here today. As Don said, I'm here to share the 2026 update to the Watershed Management Plan for Crescent Lake and Lake Wentworth, a plan that really belongs to all of you in this community. As Don said, my name is Laura Deemer. I'm a certified lake manager and project manager for FB Environmental Associates. So FBE developed the original plan back in 2012, and we're really thrilled to be part of this 2026 update. Thank you. So here's what to expect today for my presentation. So I'm going to be walking you through a very high-level summary of the plan. I'm trying to avoid any technical details or jargon, but I want you to be rest assured that there's a lot of technical information that serves as the foundation of the plan, and so you can find more details in the plan itself or the supplemental documents that go with the plan, which I highly encourage you all to read. Today, I'm really going to be focusing on the action plan, reviewing what you can continue to do to protect the lake and hopefully inspire and empower the next generation of lake stewards. So I've spoken to your group a few times now, so this slide might be familiar to some. Like I said, we did help develop the Watershed Management Plan back in 2012, and this Watershed Management Plan has essentially been your guide to protecting your lake. So back around 2012, we went through this watershed planning cycle. So at the time, we were building public support through presentations and establishing a steering committee that helped guide the development of the plan. We did a considerable amount of field work, field surveys around the watershed and the shoreline to inventory the potential issues that were impacting water quality. We defined what those problems were. We did a water quality analysis and a modeling effort that helped to quantify where the major sources of nutrients were coming from. And then we were able to set a goal with your community and figure out what the solutions were to help achieve that goal. And that all came together in the Watershed Management Plan, the core, the meat of which is the action plan. So for the last 10 years, you've been in this implementation phase, doing the actual work of the plan. And since it's been over a decade, we always want to go back through this cycle on a regular basis because things change in the watershed. So over the last year and a half, we've been going back through this cycle to rebuild public support, re-inventory the watershed, re-examine water quality, re-evaluate the goal and action plan. So all of this has now been summarized in the updated Watershed Management Plan for Lake Wentworth and Crescent Lake. Okay, so obviously you're all very familiar with your lake, but Lake Wentworth is just this big, beautiful lake. It's over 3,100 acres. It has over 14 miles of shoreline. Crescent Lake is smaller and shallower, but it's strongly connected to Lake Wentworth through the Smith River. So water flows from Lake Wentworth into Crescent Lake both of which their water levels are regulated by the dam at the outlet of Crescent Lake. And that dam is really important because it influences downstream flow to Wolfeboro Bay in Lake Winnipesaukee. The watershed itself is about 35 square miles, mostly in Wolfeboro, but it does extend into Brookfield, New Durham, and Ossipee, and it's mostly forested, about 85%, which is a huge natural asset for you and one of the biggest protectors for your water quality. So why do these lakes matter? Obviously, I am preaching to the choir here because you are all here because you know why these lakes matter. You know that these lakes aren't just water. They're where kids learn to swim. They're where families gather every summer. They're where loons nest and fish thrive. So Lake Wentworth is legislatively classified as what we call a Class A water body by the state of New Hampshire, which means it's one of the highest quality waters in the state, which is really an incredible distinction that's held by only a handful of non-drinking water lakes in New Hampshire. At the community forum last year, for those who may have been in attendance, over 100 of you showed up and told us that water quality is the #1 thing that you value. So that's not just nice to hear, it's really what drives this entire plan. And the Wentworth Watershed Association has been at this for over 100 years. That's really an extraordinary legacy. And so part of our responsibilities is to make sure that the next generation is carrying that legacy forward. So what exactly is the problem we're trying to solve? It really comes down to one element, and that's phosphorus. Phosphorus is a natural nutrient. It's in the soil, it's in organic matter, but when human activities wash excess phosphorus into the lake, it acts like a fertilizer. It feeds algae and cyanobacteria, which can rapidly form blooms that then interfere with safe recreational and aquatic life use. So cyanobacteria interferes with safe lake use and access because some blooms can produce potentially harmful toxins. Cyanotoxin production by cyanobacteria can cause a wide range of health effects, from as minimal as like an irritating skin rash to something more serious, neurological disorders, and some rare cases, death, which we typically would see more in pets or livestock. So let's look at some numbers for these lakes. So for Lake Wentworth, we've seen almost a tripling of the phosphorus load since pre-development. So our influence and impact on the landscape over time has almost tripled the amount of phosphorus that's in Lake Wentworth. Right now, in our current state, more than half of that phosphorus load is what we consider manageable. So that's coming from local human activities. So that's runoff from development, that's septic system loading through groundwater, and it's more than half the load, which is both alarming but also inspiring because we have a lot of local control to bring that number down. And then as part of this plan, we also reprojected phosphorus loading into the future in what we call the build-out analysis. So we said, okay, based on environmental constraints of where we can build and not build, and where your current zoning ordinances allow for building right now, how much more phosphorus could be added into the future if your watershed would be built out fully. And so again, in the future, theoretically, you have ordinances that would allow potentially another doubling of the phosphorus load to the lake. So these are some serious things to consider and call to action. Very similar story with Crescent Lake, a 230% increase since pre-development. Over 60% of that load comes from local human influences, and again, almost a doubling of phosphorus load at full build-out in the future. So the problem is our presence on the landscape really has altered these lake systems in ways that make them less resilient to threats. So this threat to resiliency is really even more critical in the face of growing climate pressures. So over the last century, New England has seen air temperatures rise by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. We're getting more intense rain events and longer dry periods. Ice out dates are coming earlier, and the growing season is then getting longer. So this means that more nutrients are washing in and concentrating in the lake. Warmer water temperatures over an extended period of time are supporting greater productivity or growth. And so all of this is fueling algae and cyanobacteria growth, which also has effects on oxygen depletion in the lake, which can limit suitable fish habitat, and has the potential to release even more phosphorus coming out of our lake sediments. So, the message here is that we are in an unprecedented time in recent human history. Climate change is accelerating in ways that is going to test every watershed in New England. So while we can't necessarily control the climate at a local level, what we can control is how much phosphorus we are contributing to the lake, and that's where the watershed management plan really comes in. So let's review and talk about just all the incredible work that's already been done over the last decade since your original plan development. So since the 2012 plan, 24 of the highest impact pollution sites in the watershed have been addressed. Things like road drainage improvements, erosion control, shoreline stabilization, which these images showcase a few examples of. That's removed 16 kilograms of phosphorus from entering the lake, which is incredible. And then 17 more sites have conceptual designs ready to go. I know that Julie and her group have secured multiple phases of state grant funding, state and federal grant funding, remediating 6 major sites that were identified in the 2012 plan. So, this really tremendous effort. So certainly commendable effort. And then the WWA has also directly conserved 485 acres of land in the watershed. So that's up from 175 acres since the 2012 plan. The Lakes Region Conservation Trust protects another 37 acres, and the Forest Society protects another 300 acres in the watershed. So as of today, about 13% of the Lake Wentworth Crescent Lake watershed is in conservation, which is great. And of course, the WWA maintains an extensive volunteer stewardship team that monitors these properties throughout the watershed, maintaining trails, engaging with youth programs in schools, and they're in the process of developing a strategic plan to prioritize parcel based on conservation value. So I just want to pause and emphasize that land conservation is really the single most cost-effective option to protecting water quality. Every acre of land conserved in the watershed will have the highest benefit to long-term water quality protection than really any other effort that we're recommending. So it'll be so important to continue finding opportunities for land conservation in the watershed. The WWA, since the 2012 plan, launched the Lake Minded program. So that's a technical assistant program for landowners, very similar to the Lake Smart program run by New Hampshire Lakes. So under this program, 35 properties have been visited and assessed and help landowners figure out what they can do on their own land to reduce runoff. Many of you at last summer's community forum indicated interest in participating, so I really encourage you to go on the WWA website to request a consultation. There's also numerous educational resources For landowners, I have one pictured up here to really understand your options for reducing runoff from your property. They also have a nice list of preferred contractors for lake-friendly landscaping. There are an estimated 567 septic systems in the shoreline zone of both lakes. As part of this plan update, we pulled septic permits issued since 2011 to document systems that had been replaced or upgraded or newly constructed since the 2012 plan. And we found about 100 septic systems have had some sort of either full replacement or small upgrades to their system in the shoreline zone. So that's about 18% of systems. And again, this is really promising and impactful work. Wolfeboro has also enacted or is in progress to enact some important septic system ordinances that require inspections at shoreline property transfer, which is actually now required at the state level anyways. Specific setback requirements for septic systems depending on how close they are to surface waters, and also the type of soil that's underneath the leach field as it's heading towards a surface water. We're looking into some 3-year pump out requirements and developing a septic system management plan. So I do want to just emphasize too that it's important to remember too that even a properly sited and functioning septic system, they're not designed to treat phosphorus directly. So most phosphorus in a leach field is treated in underlying native soils, and some soils are better at treatment than others. So if your leach field is underlain by, say, sandier soils, maybe close to groundwater, then there's likely very little treatment of phosphorus coming from your leach field, and this phosphorus can be easily carried to the lakes. There can also be a danger of overloading a system that isn't sized big enough for the amount of people using it, even if it's for a very short time, like say a weekend family gathering. I have heard of cases around the state where they have raw wastewater breaking out into lakes during high use times. It was just one weekend, they had 30, 40 people in their house, on this system, and we have these breakouts. So really just keep that in mind and inform your guests as well. And then finally, of course, education and outreach work by WWA has really been extraordinary. So whether it's these water summits, the numerous workshops that Dawn mentioned, the Zephyr newsletter, the website, you've had hundreds of events reaching hundreds of people. You have close to 1,000 members and 150 engaged volunteers. You really have an incredible network of people that are making a difference in your community to bring awareness and ultimately behavior change to those living around and enjoying these lakes. So, well done. And all that effort really paid off. I tried making firework themes on this slide, so hopefully it's coming through. In 2012, we set a goal. We said, reduce the phosphorus load to Lake Wentworth by 15% in 10 years. That is a challenging target for any lake, anywhere, but you did it. The data show a statistically significant water quality improvement at 2 of your deep spot station, Fuller's and Governor's, and the lake has met its goal. So I really, yeah. Yeah, I mean, all the credit goes to, everyone in this room and beyond. Be proud. This is exceptional and really reflects the years of dedication by WWA, volunteers, landowners, and a community that is showing up. So truly, well done. So unfortunately, Crescent Lake is a little different story. So Crescent Lake did not meet its 2012 goal, and actually phosphorus levels have increased slightly by about 5% in the last 10 years. So why is Crescent Lake struggling more? It's smaller, it's shallower, and its direct watershed is much more developed than Lake Wentworth. But I want to emphasize that there is a silver lining here. So Crescent Lake benefits enormously from Lake Wentworth. The high flushing with low phosphorus water that's coming from Lake Wentworth actually protects Crescent Lake from far worse water quality. So continuing to reduce phosphorus inputs to Lake Wentworth will ultimately benefit Crescent Lake too, but it does seem in the past 10 years that the impacts of increasing loading directly around Crescent Lake has really been outpacing the improvements we're seeing from Lake Wentworth as it's flushing into Crescent Lake. So, really, I think, some attention should be placed on reducing those direct areas around Crescent Lake over the next 10 years. And that'll be important to hopefully meeting the goal for Crescent Lake 10 years from now. Also, a quick thing to point out too is that the goal is based on average annual conditions over a 10-year period. So there is going to be variability in individual phosphorus measurements that we're out collecting. You're going to have higher and lower values than that average condition that we're basing the goal on. So a few high individual measurements should not be discouraging. So I just wanted to pass that message along. So what are we aiming for the next 10 years? So this is the updated 2026 goal. We want to obviously meet state water quality standards that protects aquatic life and gives us safe recreational access. And we want to substantially reduce the risk of cyanobacteria blooms. So we have two objectives for that. The first one is reducing that phosphorus load from existing development. We set it at 10% for Lake Wentworth and 15% for Crescent Lake. And then we also want to make sure that new development doesn't add to the problem. So as the watershed continues to grow, and it will, we need to increase conserved areas and strengthen ordinances that ensure new homes and roads in the watershed don't erase the progress that you've all made. The preliminary estimated cost to achieve this is just over $1 million over the next 10 years, and that certainly sounds like a lot, but it is very achievable through federal and state grants, municipal investments, and private contributions, and of course the volunteer hours that this community generously provides. Achieving this goal is going to take all of us. This is a team effort. There's no one group, not the WWA, not the town, not DES or DOT that can protect these lakes alone. We all have a role in this. So for landowners, your shoreline is the first line of defense. A vegetated buffer of native plants along the water's edge filters runoff before it reaches the lake. Have your septic system inspected every few years, avoid fertilizers near the water. For towns, so Wolfeboro and the other watershed towns have a lot of powerful tools in their toolbox when it's related to updating ordinances and zoning, having particular permitting requirements. So strengthening, say, setbacks or requiring stormwater controls, and also key is increasing enforcement capacity can really have a meaningful difference over time. The biggest issue identified at the community forum last year was a lack of consistent enforcement of rules and regulations, not only at the local level, but the state level as well. So, a goal can be, building up that capacity, at least at the town level, will be important to improve this over time. And then for the state, so DES is obviously a critical partner, whether it's for monitoring, technical assistance, and then of course grant funding that makes all of these projects possible. But DOT also has a critical role. They're maintaining roads, that is really the key to protecting water quality throughout throughout the watershed, and we really need DOT participation in implementing those road fixes and best practices to protect water quality. Since most of you are in that private landowner group, I just wanted to focus more specifically on what you can all do to protect the lake. So we're in the generation of AI now, so I put in a prompt, and this is the lake scene that I was given, which I thought was pretty good. So, of course, the shoreline buffer, right? I already mentioned this, but it's really the single most impactful thing that you can do. And when you're planting native plants, you want to pick things, the plants, shrubs, trees that have those deep root systems. They are your natural filter. They're going to trap sediment, they're going to absorb nutrients, and they're going to stabilize the bank. Septic system care, so if your system is older, 20 years old possibly, and you haven't had it inspected, please do. Better yet, please have your system inspected just regularly every few years, maybe even when you're pumping it, regardless of age. The Wolfeboro regulations and the new New Hampshire law does require inspections at waterfront property transfers now, so this does matter for your real estate value too. Fertilizer, so most lakeside soils don't need fertilizer, especially for phosphorus, so please have your soil tested first. UNH Extension should offer those kits before you apply anything. And then if you're in doubt, just skip it. And also to be clear, New Hampshire law does already prohibit the use of fertilizers within 25 feet of a surface water. But the spirit of that law does matter beyond that 20-foot boundary. Stormwater management, so think about where water is running off of your property, whether it's off your roof or does your driveway drain toward the lake. A rain garden, a French drain, or even redirecting a downspout can make a big difference. And I want to emphasize again, the Lake Minded program. It's available to all of you who want a free site assessment. So someone, a trained volunteer or staff person will walk your property and help you identify things you can do to reduce runoff. So this is an incredible resource, and you should use it. Pet waste, so it is smaller, but it is a real contributor when you multiply it across hundreds of properties. So dog waste does contain phosphorus and bacteria, so pick it up every time, no matter where you are in the watershed. And then camp roads. So gravel roads are a major source of sediment and phosphorus, not only Lake Wentworth, but across most of our New Hampshire lakes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Proper grading, drainage, and water bars keep sediment and nutrients out of the lake. So this next phase of work is going to be harder than the last phase. So if you've addressed already many of the most obvious high impact pollution sites, so what remains is a little bit more diffuse. It's the cumulative effect of hundreds of private properties, roads, and behaviors across the entire watershed. So the challenges are, we have still about 90 pollution sites that still need to be addressed in the watershed. From the shoreline work, about 45% of Lake Wentworth shoreline and 62% of Crescent Lake shoreline need some level of runoff management. There are still several hundred aging septic systems that need inspections and possible upgrades or replacements. And then if development does continue at historical rates without intervention or runoff mitigation, phosphorus loads to both lakes could nearly double by the end of the century. There is a flip side, of course, right? So the opportunities, like I said, there's 17 sites that already have conceptual designs and they're ready to move forward with implementation. WWA has numerous tools and programs and community relationships to expand their reach to landowners and other partners to increase awareness at multiple levels. Stronger ordinances are in the pipeline, there's plenty still to do with developing stronger and maybe some more consistent enforcement to make new development less impactful to water quality. Emphasizing conservation as well. Like I said, it's proven to be your best long-term protection for water quality, and WWA is actively working on an updated strategic plan. And then, of course, WWA, with your engaged community, have really proven that you show up and you can do the hard work that's needed to make a difference. So, like I said, WWA has been protecting these lakes for over 100 years, but organizations like that don't survive on autopilot. They survive because each generation steps up to carry the work forward. So that's really the challenge for this generation of lake stewards, not just doing the work yourselves, but making sure you're bringing new people into the fold, sharing what you know with your neighbors, welcoming new members, engaging young people in monitoring and education. You have almost 1,000 members now with paid staff, an active volunteer force, an amazing network, but that only works if the community continues to support it. So obviously, if you're not a member yet, please join. If you are, renew and bring someone new with you. These lakes really belong to all of us, and also to our children and our grandchildren, and we want to make sure that they can enjoy these lakes just as we have. So to wrap this up, a decade ago now, you set this ambitious goal for the lakes, and you met it with Lake Wentworth. It happened because of all of you, people who care, people who show up, people who do the work. The lakes really need that same energy for the next decade. But the challenges are real, whether it's climate change, aging septic systems, continued development pressure, but so are the opportunities to make meaningful difference in protecting the excellent water quality of these lakes. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing to protect these lakes. It really is truly inspiring, and I'm so glad to be part of your journey. I'd be happy to take any questions. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So there's not necessarily, repeat the question. He was asking about pre-development and whether there was a certain time point associated with that. What are we defining for pre-development? So no, there's not a particular year necessarily. It's just part of the modeling where we took out all the human influences, right? So we zeroed out septic systems, all developed land was converted back to forest. So it was just some hypothetical time point in the past when human influence was very minimal on the landscape. Yeah. Wait, can you repeat the question? And is the microphone on? I didn't really hear a difference.
I think it's on now. Thank you.
Oh, great.
Okay. I apologize. The percentage of stuff that you showed us was that the non-human contributors was 2/3, 3/4 of all the increase. Mm-hmm. Is that all inevitable in climate change, or is there any other action items that we can do to affect that 3/4 as well as our own stuff that you spent most of your talk on?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So the model that we use is, it's a helpful and robust model, but is a planning level model. And so climate change is not necessarily incorporated within the model itself. So it's really just straight land cover, land use change over time in these different scenarios. But you're right, like climate change does matter. So, what these models help us understand is where the major sources of nutrients are coming from and where we should prioritize our work, because every bit of phosphorus that we prevent from entering the lake is going to make it more resilient to the climate change pressures, right? So when we have these major storm events and then extended dry periods where the water is very calm and warm for a long period of time and can promote the growth of, say cyanobacteria, that work is trying to minimize that risk so that there's less fuel or food in the lake to actually feed those cyanobacteria when climate change is making environmental conditions very friendly for cyanobacteria to grow.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I will pass it on to you, sir, when I'm finished, because I'll give you the microphone after I share my question. So Mary Schillereff, my family's been on Lake Wentworth since 1926. I was one of the Lay Lake's water monitors at Governor's Deep until I couldn't get in and out of the boat. The point being, I'm very concerned about the plethora of mosquito and tick spraying that's happening in the yards, and the advent of them that leaching into the lake. So much of we'd go out into the lake, we'd do what we needed to do, testing, and then see all that's happening around the lake, uphill from the lake. And it just seemed futile and rather depressing, honestly. But I'm happy to hear what's going on. But could you speak to the issue of this very popular mosquito and tick spraying that's happening on the shores? Thank you.
Yeah, so I can talk generally about pesticides, herbicides, right? I mean, these are chemicals, and they're trying to target certain species that, certain what we're considering pests, because we want less of that. But I think it's important to understand that an ecosystem is an internet-connected system, and every level of the ecosystem plays a role. And so when we're trying to, eliminate one part of the population, it's certainly never just targeting that group usually. But even if it did, you're taking out a critical part of the food web, and that does have ramifications throughout the food web. We see it in the lakes too, where we get these imbalances, where we do sometimes manipulate the system through fish stocking, right? And it depends on if you have any one of those groups, whether it's a predatory fish population that explodes, they'll start consuming the forage fish, right? And the forage fish populations go down. Well, then there's not a lot that are grazing on zooplankton, so maybe their populations explode. So there's these connections between all of these groups that are really important, and they do have long-term ramifications for our ecosystems.
First of all, I want to say thanks to you, all your volunteers, and I specifically want to single out the people who sit at the boat ramps and check the boats, because milfoil is actually the greatest danger to our lake, far more than very serious issues that you've been discussing. But my question is, at the excellent hearings we had on proposed changes to our Main Street, there was some discussion about controlling the runoff from the streets, that there was a plan, as I recall, part of that presentation where the city would be ponding and doing other things to keep salt and other impurities from running into the lake. Has there been any development on that? Is that sort of just nowhere, or are we doing something about that?
So that's a great question, and it's a perfect segue to our next speaker. Well, we couldn't have asked for a better segue than that. So our next speaker is Jason Ayotte from New Hampshire DOT. He's an engineer and project manager with DOT, and he's probably had the I know he's had the great pleasure of speaking in this room before. And what he's going to talk about is some of the environmental enhancements and improvements that are going to be associated with redeveloping South Main Street, or Route 28. And it's a project that's been many, many years in the making. And, 28 affects most of the water resources in town. Russ Pond, Crescent Lake, Lake Winnipesaukee. It runs right through town. And the water that hits Route 28 ends up in one of those lakes. And so he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Let's see. Perfect. All right. Again, thank you. My name is Jason Ayotte. I'm the project manager at New Hampshire DOT. I've been responsible for the South Main Street project for about 5 years in 2021 when I took over as project manager. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. You have a couple tremendous advocates for your watershed associations that sit on our project advisory committee, as well as been at most of our meetings with Julie Brown and Linda Murray. A lot of the improvements that I can share with you today that we're going to be incorporating within 2 of the construction contracts that we anticipate for South Main Street are a direct result of Julie coming to probably our 2nd project advisory committee meeting and making stormwater a major component. It's obviously something that the department considers throughout our project development process, but a lot of times we don't necessarily dive as deep as we have been, pun intended, as this early in the process. So hopefully today I can kind of share with you a few of the project details, and then through the Q&A offer some additional perspective. Mostly, I think I really also want to thank your patience because folks have been seeing these projects really since 2007. It entered the 10-year plan in 2015, but there was a tremendous amount of effort by the town and staff within the town and obviously other stakeholders that really pushed the project to make it to the 10-year plan. Transportation projects as a whole are extremely complex with federal dollars, and they do take time. So again, thank you for your patience and watching us navigate that process. So again, I want to kind of share with you today the project improvements that you're going to see at an upcoming public hearing in August, and then obviously tell you what the next steps. And lastly, I kind of want to finish off with what I think that the watershed associations and the town can start thinking about in the future after this section of South Main Street is complete. So where we are in the project development process, again, it's a longer process. We've completed all the data collection and engineering analyses. We're gearing up for our public hearing. It's a state process that is really nominated individuals by governor and council, and that allows us to be able to proceed with right-of-way acquisitions that are necessary for the stormwater best management practices that are within the project. The next step for us, and we've actually done a little bit of advanced design with our team at Stantec, and I forgot to mention that Dave McNamara, the project manager from Stantec, is here, and he's my bulletproof vest. So if you have any really tough questions, he's the gentleman to talk to. So again, we have advanced some of the final design elements, which would allow us to really kind of understand the grading and the stormwater collection that's required for the overall South Main Street projects. And that allows us to identify what those slope impacts are, and then be able to reserve the necessary easements or right-of-way to be able to construct those best management practices. We do have a fair amount of utilities, and there's over 90 parcels that are affected as we as we walk through. So I'm going to share a couple other specific details on how we thought we were able to navigate the utility relocations and the right-of-way acquisitions through the process. So this is where we stand. The most important thing for project manager is understanding schedule and budget. Currently, our construction estimate is over $18 million. The 10-year plan has budgeted $12 million. So again, every time I come to these meetings, I continue to show more shortfall, and that is unfortunately a factor of the bidding climate and where we are as inflationary factors affect all of our projects. As I tell Julie, there is some concern that we won't be able to complete it, but we're going to proceed. The idea of a public hearing is to be able to have the right to be able to acquire the necessary easements and the right-of-way, so we need to look at the entire project, and then we're going to manage the project as we move forward in 2 different construction projects that will allow us to be successful in getting the first 2 BMPs complete for you, and then be able to plan for the shortfall on the second project. All right, so this is our schedule. In 25, we were pretty successful in wrapping up all of our historic preservation and the federal requirements that deal with cultural resources. So we were able to satisfy that. We completed a preliminary design, and we've written our National Environmental Policy Act document, which is a critical piece in order for us to be able to have the construction funding and the final design funding necessary for these improvements. This year, we have really finalized that, begun the state process for our public hearing. We expect to have that in the first week of August. 2 of your select board members are on the commission. And in addition to that, we plan to also host an open house so that those affected property owners will be able to come and ask questions about the direct impacts to them and what type of impacts those are. Again, I spoke to the utility coordination. We actually jump-started that with Wolfeboro Electric because they're significantly impacted by any type of construction necessary. We've also brainstormed some different solutions on how we can solve the traffic control and the construction sequencing. And then this year, we intend to start our right-of-way acquisitions, assuming a successful public hearing. Next year is really going to be, for Stantec, a big effort for them to finalize the first contract, and that will include acquiring our New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services wetland impact, finalizing the contract plans, and then our right-of-way team will be meeting with each affected property owner. We have, again, 2 contracts, so that will be the focus next year of the south contract, which will be from Pleasant Valley to approximately Old Mill. In 28-29, that's when we're hoping construction starts on the first contract, and then Stantec will be able to begin the second contract. The primary reason for 2 contracts is the utility relocations and the right-of-way acquisitions. It could be over 2 years of utility relocations if we focused on that first. It could be up to 4 years of right-of-way acquisitions. So in order to advance the construction, we really needed the opportunity to separate the project and help streamline some of our work. All right, so the project improvements. The purpose, when it first entered the 10-year plan, it was really to address pavement condition because, honestly, we have a concrete slab, and as a Department of Transportation, we were kind of focused on roadway and traffic over the number of years. Fortunately, the town advanced a lot of that coordination, and through their planning and corridor study, they kind of shifted gears at the time to really promote pedestrian and bicycle improvements. So therefore, we have the widened shoulders, reconstruction of the sidewalks. And then over the last 5 years, I would say there's been, a greater focus, and certainly the 2012 Watershed Management Plan was, an influencing factor in the necessary water quality. And again, historically, in the 90s and the 2000s, water quality wasn't as critical, but certainly over the last 20 years, the department has, we have a memorandum of agreement with Department of Environmental Services to focus on making sure that water quality. So most of the improvements that you're going to see in the next couple slides are really geared for stormwater management and water quality. So here's a slide of the overall corridor and what we're proposing. You're going to see at the upper left image is essentially contract 1, and then the lower image is contract 2. Contract 1 will be from Pleasant Valley, and that includes minor intersection improvements, but allows us to construct a stormwater pond right there in the intersection area, and that will reconstruct the roadway, remove the concrete slab, really minor improvements at the intersections. It's going to provide some better drive access for Kingswood High School, improve the pedestrian crossing at Kingswood Golf Club, and then terminate just north of Coves End Road. And again, I'll go into a little bit of the stormwater improvements in a second. Second project will hopefully advertise in 2029, and we'll pick up from where we leave off with that south contract, and then again reconstruct the roadway, really improve stormwater. We've identified through all of your work property on the backside of Huggins Hospital to be able to construct a stormwater pond and then tie into Pickering Corner. Through the advocacy of this group, we really want to thank the identification of the Coves End area. Certainly, Russ Pond the BMP at Pleasant Valley is a great place to be able to do that. So I think based on all of your efforts, we were able to implement all of those, and then certainly your relationships with Huggins Hospital identified that property on the backside to be able to construct a stormwater pond. All right. I kind of spoke to this a little bit as far as what our roadway improvements are going to be, and I think the big thing that I want to drive home is it really is geared to the reconstruction of South Main Street. There's no additional vehicle capacity, and there's no intersection improvements as part of that. The focus from the community has really been let's address the degrading infrastructure and solve that first. As far as water quality, the project is going to meet the Department of Environmental Services alteration of terrain requirements, and I'll touch base on that. Certainly incorporates the town and the Watershed Association goals. We construct 3 new best management practices with nearly 10,000 linear feet of new storm drain that's going to be helping some additional areas that are part of the critical areas that we need to invest in. Okay, so I wanted to speed up a little bit so that I could spend more time on the next few slides. So this is, for every project the Department of Transportation has, we are required to make sure that we meet water quality program goals. We have a water quality program that's housed in our Bureau of Environment. They're really responsible for reviewing all of the projects to make sure that, first, we can achieve the National Environmental Policy Act resolution, and we can clear that to be able to have that additional funding. The next is to focus on all of the state regulations. So alteration of terrain is the biggest one that we're affected. So this meets the redevelopment AOT guidelines, where I think our previous interpretation as we were developing this was all 100% of all new pavement and 30% of existing pavement need to be collected and treated prior to discharge. I think that we're probably going to be able to achieve a little bit more of that, but then we still have the section to the north really affecting Pickering Corner and conveyed to Lake Winnipesaukee, where we do not have any stormwater treatment for that one, and I'll discuss that in a second. We do have goals to meet groundwater recharge. However, at the stage that we're at, we're proposing BMPs, and I'll share that with you in a second. Those BMPs still need soil testing, geotechnical information, and once we clear the public hearing, we'll be able to have the right to do some of that testing on private property. We have a goal of no increase in peak flow within our sub-watersheds, and then because we're within a quarter mile of the lakes, we do need to have those higher order filtration practices, whether it's bioretention is our first goal, but we're incorporating gravel wetlands because that's one of the safer ways that we can advance the project at this point. We do have impacts within the shoreland protection area on Crescent Lake. I'll share with you that in a second. And then because of the size of the project, we do expect a construction general permit through EPA, where we do need to file a notice of intent. And this is a very large project for really the town as well as the department. Therefore, we will have the standard erosion control practices as we proceed. So we recognize, and all of you are much more knowledgeable about where we are within the existing. Certainly you're aware that we have no existing stormwater BMPs within this section of roadway. We have aging drainage infrastructure between the culverts and the closed drainage systems. We have no outlet protection at most of these locations. We have eroding ditch lines, eroding tributaries to Crescent Lake and Russ Pond that we need to deal with. We have some outlets that are directly discharging to ponds. It may not necessarily be under DOT's control, but certainly we have an influence on that with our South Main Street. We have very, very large impervious areas that are all contributing within the watershed. And from a roadway standpoint, we have very flat grades, and that's contributing to additional erosion as well as winter maintenance concerns that we all have. All right, so this is the stuff that you probably really want to see. So for within the Russ Pond watershed, that essentially from the southerly limits at where we're improving Pleasant Valley Road and to the high point that's about the Kingswood High School driveways. So we're able to collect that, where the improvements that we're offering really reduces the amount of impervious area that is being directed to that area. We're able to collect about 4.4 acres of sub-watershed that was Old Canapache, McManus, Kingswood, Pleasant Valley. Of that, there's about 1.8 acres of impervious that we're collecting and able to treat. We're proposing a bioretention BMP, and obviously that may change with the soil testing that's needed to be able to understand if we can do infiltration. This exceeds our alteration of terrain treatment requirements, which is fantastic. It does require a right-of-way acquisition, which is necessary to relocate the intersection slightly south, as well as construct the BMP. The outlet to that currently is being proposed to bring back into the state right-of-way, and then the outlet is near Cross Road. So we have, within our public hearing plan, we're identifying an area at Cross Road that we need to be able to at least control the outlet. All right. Crescent Lake. Crescent Lake will be comprised of 2 sub-watersheds for us. The first one is really to Cove's End, and again, this is Julie Brown brought this to us very early on. The town had identified an upland on the Kingswood Golf Club that they had previously negotiated, and Cove's End obviously preserves that forested area and is directly adjacent to the right-of-way, which is advantageous for the state. We do have a challenge in the outlet that we're still exploring. So what we're showing is really what we envision the worst-case scenario for us from an access, preservation, and maintenance easement that would be required. So I'll go into that in a second. But as far as what we're able to do, well, the project itself is going to add 18,000 square feet of new impervious, and that is comprised of the wider shoulders and some of the sidewalk extensions that we are proposing. Within that sub-watershed, we're collecting about 8.3 acres. It's going to be collected and conveyed to the Cove's End BMP, of which about half of that, or just less than half of that, is going to be impervious. The water quality volume, for those that want to geek out a little bit, we're looking at proposing about 14,600 cubic feet that's required for that specific BMP. The goal is to meet pre versus post from our peak flow, meet the water quality volume as I just explained, and then the groundwater recharge volume that's required for AOT still has to be determined, as I said previously on the Russ Ponds BMP. Again, this requires a right-of-way acquisition and an access easement. Right now, we're proposing that outlet to be conveyed and constructed down Cove's End Pond Road to an outlet at Crescent Lake. We have a couple other solutions that bring it back into the state right-of-way, but it increases the size and increases the cost. So if we're successful. We do need to meet with Cove's End. Julie has been advocating for us to meet with them as soon as possible. We're just currently right now walking through and making sure that we've identified all of the property owners affected so that we can meet with as many as that are available. All right. The second sub-watershed really picks up from Old Mill Road. Will be part of that second contract. We do have a little bit of off-site, but mostly it's South Main Street. We're adding an additional 22,000 or more area of impervious. Of that, I guess the collection that we see would be South Main Street. One of the advantages to this concept is to divert some of the runoff that is currently being conveyed down Christensen Ridge, and we're going to convey that to the BMP that's on Crescent Lake. This does require us to coordinate with the town of Wolfeboro. They're proposing a waterline project and some storm drain improvements on Crescent Lake, and so we've been working with Public Works to be able to identify the phasing and sequencing that we need for that, and then how we could do that. So I think this is the big thing is it collects a lot of runoff that's untreated, that is directly conveyed to Crescent Lake. It's collecting about 9.3 acres, of which 4.3 are impervious. So that you got, again, some large impervious areas of the town complex, Huggins Hospital. We're not really affecting anything on Huggins Hospital, but we can deal with the South Main Street section. This does require right-of-way acquisition, and very, very early on, Linda and folks, we all met with Huggins, and we've been able to at least identify the preferred location for that best management practice, which we're proposing a gravel wetland at this point. All right. I'll take a few questions afterwards. Just to kind of gear up for the next steps. Again, I spoke of the public hearing. It's a really important process for us to be able to step through the right-of-way acquisition phase. Once we present, we're really hoping that the community and the affected stakeholders will come to the meeting and support the project and its goals. And that's really an ask of all of you, that if you are in town that first week in August, if you would come and speak for the project. And then part of that process, if we do have what we feel is a successful public hearing, we do have a follow-up meeting at the Department of Transportation with that commission, which is called the Finding of Occasion, and it basically walks through all of the comments that we hear that night. And we anticipate that at the conclusion of the year, where at that point in time, our Bureau of Environment will give us approval to move forward with our final design and construction funding. So currently, what we've been working on, we are able to advance some of the final design aspects under preliminary design, and Stantec has been fantastic in being able to help us do that. We primarily wanted to do that because we wanted to give advance notice to the utility companies. There are significant utility aerial and underground that we need to work around and accommodate, and it's certainly an expense for Wolfeboro Electric. And so therefore we wanted to advance some of that early on. We're fairly close to being able to go to that next step. We anticipate by the end of the year that for the entire corridor, both contracts, we'll be able to give them plans to start planning. We're also going to give all of the plans to our Bureau of Right-of-Way to start creating our right-of-way acquisition plans. And again, that way it gives all 90 parcels to be able to start now. We'd only need the first 35 to start the first contract, which I explained previously would be from Pleasant Valley to Old Mill. And I'm not going to get into all the specifics of right-of-way and project agreements and maintenance agreements that we have with the community, but Old Mill is an important designation line for the town. North of Old Mill, the Department of Transportation really only has maintenance responsibility from white line to white line. It's a white line community. So part of contract 2 is to absorb that, because the white line district and the policy that we had almost 50 years ago was really geared towards areas with public parking, on-street parking, and some additional responsibilities that the town may pick up because we don't have the resources. So that's this slide. This is what we need to work through as a department with the community and really identify what that is. And that's it's important to have a draft for the community this year to start working through that. All right, and this is the last real slide that I have for all of you. And so the South Main Street project is part of the 10-year plan process, and it occurs every 2 years. In June, we expect that the governor to sign this current or this next 10-year plan, which is from 2026 to 2037, and that becomes law. The process for the next 10 years starts now. And so I think advocating with Lakes Region Planning Commission to be able to identify, very early on, and we can go through the project history too later with some questions, but the entire South Main Street section from the Alton Town line through Pickering Corner was on the table. As we proceeded through, those costs escalated. We really weren't able to absorb that entire project, and we discussed with the community where we were going to target those improvements, and really from Pleasant Valley to Pickering Corner was priority number one for us to address. So my ask of you, or my suggestion to all of you, is really let's start working through Julie with Glenn Trefethen at the Lakes Region to be able to look at putting the next, or that southerly section that wouldn't be improved, that could address Russ Pond as well as Lake Winnipesaukee, and really start improving some of that. So that's probably the limit of the advocacy that I can do as a Department of Transportation staff member, but I want to make sure that you're aware that this is a really important month to start having those conversations so that Lakes Region can put together what they need to be able to eventually get this in. And it may not be this next cycle, but it certainly is something that will be a conversation starter. Linda is well aware of this, and I know that they've had conversations with our District 3 office, but the best place for the dollars that you're looking for to really improve water quality are probably, from the state anyway, are probably going to come through the 10-year plan. So lastly, I did not put my contact information, partly because I want you to go to the website and I want you, my contact information is there, but there's a large amount of public involvement that we have worked through since really we kicked off in 2019, and we did have a little bit of a hiatus during the pandemic, but there's a tremendous amount of effort that's been put in by local community members that really helped us get to this point. And want you all to recognize the contributions that they have made. So that's really all I have for today, and happy to entertain a question or two if Don would like. I didn't keep track of time.
Yeah, we have time for 1 or 2 questions. If you have written questions, you can send them up here during the break. We're going to have a break for about 20 minutes after Jason's done. And don't leave, because there's lots of good stuff coming up.
Yes,
Check.
ma'am.
Hi, when is the August meeting so we know to go to it?
Great question. We haven't set the specific date. It's going to be a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, that first week of August, I believe. They're coordinating. The original date was July 30th, but 2 of our staff members were on vacation that day.
First week, either Tuesday, Wednesday, or
Thursday, correct.
Okay.
I promise Jason will tell me, and I'll blast it in the newsletter as well.
Hi, I'm curious to know how applied road treatment during the winter months will affect the retention ponds and the impervious collection acreage, and how that will be maintained.
It's a really good question. I think there's multiple layers. Obviously, when we have snow conditions, we're plowing, we don't have that snow melt. If we do have snow melt, then the collection system will be able to. We don't have a lot of the bioretention, and the gravel wetlands is an engineered practice, so therefore we would expect at least the vegetation piece would not be active during that. And I'm really not the person to be asking that question. So we don't expect a lot of treatment during the winter, but certainly once we have the spring, summer, and fall, that's when you get most of your treatment. As far as the easements, we want to acquire in fee, which means we would own that outright. We would own the BMPs, and the maintenance would be the responsibility of District 3, which is based out of Guilford. We have a local crew that would help take care of that. The town has expressed interest in also being able to have the right to assist, so we can work on that project agreement. But we do have a stormwater management plan throughout our districts that we employ, and we will be following the standard practices. These are all new BMPs that are being proposed, and those would also be managed by our water quality program and the Bureau of Environment in Concord to make sure that they're working, and when we do need upgrades, those are part of the plan that the Bureau of Environment has. So I think I got two out of. I'm not sure if I got all of your question, but I certainly can follow up later with somebody that actually knows what they're doing besides me.
Thank you very much, Jason. There appears to be a funding gap. How have other communities addressed that funding gap for projects like this?
It's a really great question. It's a case-by-case basis, and it's going to be based on really the projects from year to year. So the program, we have a 10-year plan, and it's a plan. Then every 2 years, we're really managing those projects. Like currently right now, we do have a project need, or we need to find between 28 and 2030 because we're not meeting our current program. So I think right now, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. Obviously, if we have federal approvals, we have right-of-way and the right to go into those by following through with the public hearing process. It opens up a few different avenues. One, if a project slides, the funding becomes available that year. The second piece is discretionary funding. We actively seek every year to find additional sources of revenue. And again, I think the latest change within the draft 10-year plan, if the toll increase does go through, it frees up some federal dollars to be transferred from areas adjacent to or within the turnpike system to be used elsewhere in the state. And I think within the draft 10-year plan, there's additional projects that have been proposed to be able to fund that. So that's as deep as I can go, to be honest with you, because it goes year by year. Other communities are in the same boat because we're seeing the escalation over the last couple of years. Bid prices have come up over 20% on select items, and we have to manage that. So if we have to seek, something may have to get pushed out in order for us to be able to fund important projects.
If everyone can take your seats, we'll get started again. Check. Check.
Okay, folks, if you can find a seat. Thanks to all of you who've submitted questions so far. If you have more, feel free. Just set them up on that corner, and we'll try to get them answered, either by the first speakers, or there may be more questions as we talk through the rest of the speakers. So what we're going to do now is kind of go through the major groups in town that have water resources responsibilities. That includes Mirror Lake, Russ Pond, Lake Wentworth, Wolfeboro Waters, and they're going to tell us what they have going on. And you know, these are things that are affecting your particular water body, no matter where you live in town. There'll be somebody here who kind of can address what's going on in your water body. And we're going to start off with Mirror Lake with Kathleen Scarapa, and I hope I said that right.
Sharapa, yeah, you're
Sharapa, all
really
right.
close, yes. Well, thank you so much for having us, and I thought I'd talk with you about the status, the healthy status of our lake. And so I guess all of us are very concerned about cyanobacteria. We were probably one of the first lakes to recognize that we had cyanobacteria, and but since then, that was in 2008, and that was a horror show because it was the first, and we just really were so upset about it. But so we've had outbreaks in 2008, 2014, 2019, and 2021. And since 2021, we haven't had any. So we're very pleased about that. One thing that we are concerned about is we do have a little bit of purple loose strife, and I see it all over the place. It's that pretty purple flower, but it actually is an exotic, and it shouldn't be around. But we have a trained team that knows how to remove it without scattering all the seeds. And so we have, if you are a property owner, mostly the weed watchers see it, and then they talk to the property owner about what they're going to do about it. And so they've been taking care of that. We've had Chinese mystery snail in our lakes for a while, but it seemed there isn't any known problems that they cause, but we did seem to have, typical of the Chinese mystery snail, we had the population peaked and now it's diminishing. So we're happy to see them go. Somebody brought up earlier about what about all that fogging and we're spraying for ticks and mosquitoes. I'm very concerned about that too, and I'm really happy to see that Tanya Albee is here, and she's addressing neonicotinoids in a very, very fast manner. I saw that John McDonald, our local representative, is here. He's very wise to all of these things, and he's helping that legislature move along very quickly about it. What we're going to do about it is our annual meeting comes up in about another week, and I'm going to raffle off the buckets for, it's called the mosquito bucket of doom is what some people call it, and it's a pretty simple thing that you set up, and it controls mosquitoes in a natural way with hay and grass, and you do have to buy a donut and have a bucket. It's a certain kind of a donut that you put in there. So I think after I explain it to people and then the buckets are right there, I think we'll probably have some takers on that one. We don't have spiny water fleas, but we're concerned about them. We did get good news about how they are more attractive to deeper lakes that are average 20 to 40 feet, where our average is 12 feet. So they're very adaptable creatures. We might still get them, and we're still going to watch. But I'm not as nervous about it as I have been in the past. We got very good news about our water clarity, and using a Secchi dish was that black and white thing that you drop down, and that's how you measure how far you can see. So our visibility is 16 feet. And I'm so excited about that because to be considered an oligotrophic lake, which is the highest level, the best, clearest, you only need visibility of 13 feet. So, you know, we're feeling, and it's true, you look down in Mirror Lake, you can see everything. And I don't know about your local situation, but for the last 3 winters, we've seen the northern lights on Mirror Lake at times. And that's just so astonishing. I hope you've had that thrill. We have some initiatives that we're working on. We too have a watershed management plan, very much like the one that Laura was talking about this morning. But we're more at the beginning of it. And within the next 3 weeks, I've already put together an advisory team, and within the next 3 weeks, we're going to do our shoreline surveys. So we've got about 18 months ahead of us to work to find the issues like you've already done. We're in an earlier phase of that. We have gone to the Lakes Congress every year for the past 10 years seeking what's visionary, what's happening, and that's where I learned about the mosquito buckets. We have a land conservation initiative that we're working very hard at, but Mirror Lake is only a 333-acre lake, and most of the lots, we have 103 residents lake shore, and you know most of their lots are pretty small, and the larger conservation agencies around the state and locally are mainly interested in 100+ acres, but we have like 3 acres, 4 acres, and so we're developing a small parcels plan, and we hope to encourage people, even with those small acreages, to get their land into land conservation. That was so reinforced this morning about that's the best move you can make by far. It's proactive. Most of the things we do are reactive, and it's so much more expensive and harder and so forth if you're in a reactive stance. We have a weather station that was written about in the Tuftonboro Times. Steve Cloutier has one that he puts in the lake, and we get all kinds of weather readings specifically to our lake. We have only, given our size, we're lucky to have even 1 pair of nesting loons, and they've yielded chicks for a while. Not always. Our family came there in 1979, and there were many, many years we never saw a chick, and then we started seeing chicks, and it was so exciting. So the last 2 years we've had a naming contest. So the first year, the little chick was called Claire the Loon, and then last year we had twins, and that they were named Liberty and Freedom because we first started seeing them on July 4th. We have our little boat parade on July 3rd. We're going to do that, and it's as fun watching the people on the decks yelling at us. And there's usually only 10 to 20 vehicles involved, but we often have a plane as part of the parade going along, and paddle boards and canoes, anything you want in addition to motorboats make up that parade, and that's a lot of fun. So we have been distinguished. We earned a Volunteer Champion Award, and that's through the New Hampshire Volunteers Association and what they try to do is shine a spotlight on the often unsung heroes among us, which basically are people like you. Unsung heroes. We had weed watchers. Each one of them, there were 9 weed watchers, and they all were recognized with that award. And then Monday, I'm going to go to a dinner with a small group from Mirror Lake because the Lakes Region Planning Commission is awarding the Ayers Cotton Environmental Services Award to one of our board members, Steve Scapiccio. And he's just, since he's retired, he's just done so much for the town and for our lake and now for the state. And he's recognized as a beacon of the community who enriches the environment and faithfully and persistently works to improve the environmental quality of the Lakes region. So we're getting a lot of serious work done on Mirror Lake, but we're also having a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks, Kathleen. And so I'll remind you, each of the speakers, if you have questions for any of them, just write them down and send them up front, and we're going to have a question and answer period coming up. So our next speaker is, he's been a board member of some of the most impactful conservation organizations around our area, and today he's going to speak to us about Russ Pond. Art Slocum.
Thank you. Good morning. As an update, I want to first tell you that we've applied for a 319 grant, and we've been in a long-term process to have our lake spend $300. We're going to have close to $300,000, including some funds from the town of Wolfeboro and from our own association, to invest in our northern watershed area, which has been damaged by high rain, heavy rains, I should say, and water coming down from the high school and impacting, and literally have a delta at the north end of our lake that has developed over the last several years. And as a result, we have engaged Horsley Witten, a engineering firm, and they recently, within the last few weeks, did a study and walked our watershed from met at the high school, met with Kingswood people, Wolfeboro Waters, and the town of Wolfeboro, and we walked the watershed that is impacting our lake on the north end and off of Route 28. And they also talked to a few residents that are in those impact areas. We are waiting a study from them, and when we get it, and we will know some actions that we can take, what they'll cost, et cetera. And we're looking forward to that so we can really act on the sources of our problem. Water quality-wise, we really look after phosphorus and conductivity. They're going in the wrong direction for us, quite frankly. We had our first cyanobacteria event last August, and we are certainly on top of that. And as I said, we're having an engineering study that will hopefully long-term, and as we can spend money immediately, perhaps, take care of some of those issues that are affecting us. Last annual meeting, we had Lake Smart come and make a presentation to our residents. As a result, a lot of the residents have had scheduled appointments with Lake Smart, and they've come to their properties and recommended actions to impact or mitigate storm runoff and their waterfront, which we heard earlier is a very important thing. So I would recommend Lake Smart to you. They're not just for Russ Pond, they're for Mirror Lake, anyone that wants to utilize that resource. I also would like, we also have at our annual meeting and continue to tell our residents about the impact of fireworks. We discourage their use. We're an association, we're not a policing unit or anything, but we strongly recommend that no fireworks be fired over Russ Pond. And of course, we do have rental properties that those people are advised not to fire off fireworks. So I would encourage you, not to use fireworks. And Russ Pond is very resilient, and we have been very active in what we're doing. and working with the town, our president and myself, both are members of Wolfeboro Waters and have been for quite a while. And so we do it not just for Russ Pond, we do it for the community.
Okay. Thanks, Art. Next up is Dana Huff, and he's a retired engineer and rapidly becoming a stormwater volunteer expert. And he's going to tell us a little bit about what Wolfeboro Waters has going on. But he can also talk about what he's doing for stormwater as well.
I can do that.
Right.
So Abby Adams, Dr. Adams was supposed to be here, but she had another commitment. So I'll give you a brief little bio, because there is a write-up for her in there. Retired civil engineer after 45 years in the practice. I've done a lot of water quality monitoring in my tenure, and the lakes are incredibly important to all of us, and I realize that. So I've done a lot of water quality monitoring and got involved with Wolfeboro Waters in 2024, and I'm part of that committee now. But I also sit on the assessment subcommittee, and I'll explain what some of these subcommittees do. I want to thank WWA for putting on a water summit. I think it's great because education is very key. I know a lot of you are part of the choir, but we need to spread this out to other folks as well. So let me tell you a little bit about what Wolfeboro Waters does. They were formed in 2018 after a cyanobacteria breakout on Lake Winnie that occurred in Winter Harbor. There are three subcommittees: the assessment committee, which I mentioned, a communications subcommittee, and then a mitigation and prevention subcommittee. In the assessment subcommittee, we assess several of the tributaries that come into the lakes. What Laura was talking about under watershed management, most of that is done under modeling. What we do is actually sample the streams and then measure the flow so we can determine what the flow rate loading is into a water body. And so that's important, because if we find one that's high in nutrients, we can then look upstream to see what are the causes and then see if we can do some kind of mitigation on those causes. The mitigation and prevention subcommittee does things like monitoring the lake levels for Wentworth and Crescent and the Smith River. They've done things like working on a septic system ordinance for the town, and you know, they're doing things like that, so that and education. So they're putting together a lot of different things so that people understand the impacts. The communications subcommittee endeavors, they do a lot of things, and I'm going to touch on a few of those in a minute. But I want to say, we're all volunteers, so we're a variety of backgrounds. We report to the Board of Selectmen. It was formed to address concerns over water quality in all of our lakes and ponds, and which are such an important part of the character of Wolfeboro and the surrounding area. We do collaborate with the lake associations and act as an advocate for water quality. Some of the updates that we've done in the past year and what we've got planned for this year. In the past, the Board of Selectmen asked Wolfeboro Waters to review drainage plans for Hunters. You know, as you know, Hunters had a catastrophe there and rebuilt. And so we looked at their stormwater controls. And the good news is we made suggestions on containing that stormwater and putting it through a treatment system that was enacted on. And we continue to be asked to provide our input and opinions on things that are being improved. Corinthian Yacht Club, for instance, was doing some stormwater updates, and they asked for our input on that, and we provided some. And we continue to do that. Let's see. Oh, one of the things we're doing is we are doing PCR testing on some of the samples that we take. PCR testing is similar to DNA testing or the COVID testing. We certainly all know what that was. So we're able to identify toxins that might be in some of the cyanobacteria streams or samples that we collect. We are now collecting sediment samples from all of the lakes, and what we're finding is that cyanobacteria it contains phosphorus that's tagged to the sediment. The good news is that most of our water bodies have enough aluminum in that sediment so that it helps bind the phosphorus to the sediment and it keeps it there. Aluminum just happens to be one of those reactions that's extremely important. So that's good news. But we have found that benthic the benthic mats that are in the bottom of the lakes and streams can be a problem. And if they're disturbed, they can release phosphorus into the waters that can then help produce the cyanobacteria blooms. So we're monitoring that as well. We participate in the Cyanobacteria Alert Program with the town of Wolfeboro and New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, and assist in sampling blooms when they're observed so that we can determine, are they toxic, are they not toxic, do we need to be concerned about them, do we not need to be concerned about them. And as a result of that, the Communications Committee is putting together, currently almost done, education flyers and posters that will be put at town beaches and boat launches to help people identify what they're seeing. And what I would say is, if you see something, say something. And on those flyers will be contact information so that if you see something that's a suspect, call somebody, let somebody know about that. New projects for the year are continuing to sample we're currently sampling 4 streams. We're adding 3 to 4 more on the various lakes around. And they really were identified in the watershed studies for Winter Harbor and for Wolfeboro. And now that we have the Wentworth and Crescent updates, then we can also help them as well. But I believe Don and company do quite a bit of work on Wentworth, the Wentworth Association now.
Yeah, we get out and do a few things, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And the other thing I want to say and give some credit to Don and the program that they've put together for the Wentworth Watershed Association is we're following their protocols. So the sampling and the analysis that we do, because it's a proven program and it seems to be working very well. So.
Well, I've been here 28, so 25. Yeah, well, it was sampled before me even, so, but I've only got 25 years of experience.
And it's good data. I can't say that we have that many years yet under the Wolfeboro Waters Committee, and you can't base it on one data point. You have to look at history, as kind of Laura alluded to. So in closing, Wolfeboro Waters is a town committee of volunteers that collaborates with all the lake associations and advocates the water quality for all of our lakes. There's information on the table over on that side of the building there in the back. So you can pick up some magnets and bumper stickers. There's a QR code that you can view, or whatever you do with QR codes, to get you to where you need to go. So that's a snapshot of what we've done. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Dana. That was great. Last but not least is Julie Brown, who's going to talk a little bit about what Wentworth Watershed has been doing, and then we're going to answer questions. I have a number of them here. I'm sure there's more. So.
Thanks, Don. First, I'd like to read a note from our partners at Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance. They were unfortunately unable to attend today. So from Bree, who's the deputy director there, Bree Rossigner has been a good partner with us. She says, unfortunately, the Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance was not able to attend today, but we appreciate the opportunity to be included in the 8th Annual Water Summit. We have several significant projects, programs, and initiatives underway and look forward to sharing updates as the work continues to progress. LWA continues to advance science-based solutions to address the growing threats facing the lake, including stormwater runoff, failing and aging septic systems, road salt, and aquatic invasive species. Through strategic partnerships and targeted implementation, we are taking action to protect the long-term health of Lake Winnipesaukee and its watershed. We are grateful for the strong partnerships we have throughout the watershed, including the Wentworth Watershed Association, Wolfeboro Waters, and many other local associations, volunteers, and community members working together to protect the waters that make this region so special. Protecting water quality is truly a shared effort, and we are fortunate to have so many dedicated partners in that work. If you'd like to learn more about our work and how you can support, please visit our website for the Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance. So thank you for sending some comments, Bree, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Water Summit. Now I can put my phone away. So I will give a fuller update at our annual meeting because I know the day is continuing, but I'm going to give you some highlights from the Wentworth Watershed Association. I first wanted to remark that I somehow missed one of our sponsors, and so I want to make sure that I give them their own shout out, which is the Holberton Blodgett Foundation, who, as you all know, Ann was one of the primary drivers in starting the Water Summit, and it was an office omission. So Ann and Phil, thank you so much for your sponsorship of this program. So this summer marks the culmination of several projects. I feel like I've been dancing up and down from my desk as many multi-year projects are culminating literally in the past couple weeks. It's just been one after another. I feel like I should just drop the mic and walk out. So of those culminating projects, our watershed management plan, which has been 2 years of really hard work, insane hours of volunteer effort, Rich Massey, Jack O'Connell, Joyce Pepin, Mike Pepin, and Jim Connors, Don Kretschmer. We have been working tirelessly, as well as people who are doing shoreline surveys and septic review, and our work, our contracted work with Laura Deemer and FB Environmental, and they put in more hours than we paid them. So thank you so much for your hard work to make this incredible new asset that she reported to you. We have printed copies in the office. There'll be copies in the library. There'll be copies at the town hall. The town planner will have a copy. The Board of Selectmen will have a copy. And you can see it as of today on our website. We released it this morning. So it's 185 pages. So use a rainy day. Take notes. There's so much data, and the only reason we can have this information is because of the years and years of dedication of all of the water quality data. The initial septic system survey that was done when it was door to door, when Laura was, you were an intern at that point, years ago when that first plan was done with the Lake Wentworth Foundation. A small correction, our 100th year anniversary is in 4 years. And we're going to do a huge event, and we're going to need your help for that. We're not quite there, but we're almost at our 100. So I just wanted to modify that slightly. Additionally, we are currently in the construction phase at Lake Wentworth Estates on Red Brook Circle. That was one of the top 5 sites that needed remediation in our original storm watershed management plan, and that's where we had the grant from New Hampshire Lakes as the administrator through a American Rescue Action Rescue Plan grant through ARPA that was given to us through DES. So we have been working on that project for 2 years, but really years and years of community cultivation and activation to get all those community members together and agree on the plan is everything. We will have pictures to show what's happened on that plan, but construction is literally taking place and should be completed in the next week and a half. And so we wanted to thank Wolfeboro Waters Committee for helping use some of their funds, because without a town planner, I had to serve as the administrator for the Wentworth Watershed Association, so it was a lot of staff time to do this, and so the town stepped up and helped support that time in dollars when they previously had served as the administrator. So partnerships through Wolfeboro Waters and with other lake associations, we have supported, we have verbally supported the Russ Pond project, the Wolfeboro Bay Watershed Management Plan. So if we don't work together, we don't get to utilize those fundings appropriately. So we champion each other's projects. And so right now, Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance is working on a project, and we champion them not being here today, knowing that their staff is doing something else, but next time they'll show up and maybe they'll host it at some point. So other projects that we've completed, the education kiosk. Who has been to Mass Landing recently? I know Susan has. Have you seen the new kiosk? If you have not, it's been a lot of work. You know, when you see something that beautifully printed, you don't understand the number of eyes and hours of what content we needed to be sharing. So that kiosk has served as a model, and it was also help funded through our partnership with Wolfeboro Waters as the first model of having a boat ramp kiosk, an educational kiosk, present for our visitors who come, because I think you've all heard the things that we ask you to do to protect water, but it's the visitors we really need to see the same messaging and understand the impacts of their lake use, and so they can be kind and courteous and thoughtfully environmental stewards when they recreate on the state's water. So the kiosk is now being replicated and different parts of it, and so there's going to be kiosks at all of the landings throughout town. Additionally, there's going to be a new sign going in at Albee Beach later in the summer, if I can get to it. So those are some of the big projects. I'm just seeing if I had more written remarks, but we're running low on time, so what am I missing? Oh, our shoreline revegetation projects. Again, we've been pushing it out, but courtesy of our partnership with Van Berkom Nurseries, we have 2 example projects that are going into place, starting with our new intern who starts on July 1st with my new staff member, Lenore Clark, who has joined Wentworth Watershed Association. Sam Simpson left to go to Fish and Game, and we wish her much luck in her new endeavors. But Lenore is the chair of the Conservation Commission, so she will have to abstain from voting on any of our projects, but we'll take that to have her knowledge on our staff. And so she's going to be overseeing the implementation projects at Pleasant Valley Lodges. It's another small shoreline community that shares a waterfront, and we're going to be revegetating their waterfront with native plants, pollinating plants, and that are resilient to shorefront, and they have not had any plants there. So it's a big improvement. We'll be taking pictures, as well as a property owner, Joyce Pepin and Mike Pepin, are revegetating a huge portion of their property, which they'll show to people to hopefully inspire you all to do the same. So our plant sale has been very effective, and hopefully when you see what these plugs are and how easy they are to install, you'll all be motivated next year to buy the trays. So our work continues over the next 3 years. We're going to be using the outcomes of the watershed, for the second grant I was talking about, which is a 319 grant through ARPA. The engineers have to design 3 more sites, and so we've been identifying which sites we want those concept plans for that Laura had mentioned that we had 17, so we'll have a total of 20 to use for applications. Now we just need to hope that the EPA gives money for clean water so we can find money for grants. We have a septic system workshop with Gary Spalding. If those of you who have not come to a workshop about septic systems, I know it's not necessarily what you think you want to do on a morning on Wednesday, but Gary is captivating. He makes septic systems interesting. He takes away the fear around permitting, and he has creative ideas around funding. He is just he has the scoop on poop, and I think it's worth coming to. So Wentworth Watershed Association is hosting that event. It will also be broadcasted with our partners at Wolfeboro Community Television. It'll be at the Bradley Room in the Wolfeboro Public Library on August 18th. Is that right? All right. 18th. And so we hope to see you there. Everybody is responsible for dealing with the waste that's coming on their property, and it's one of the biggest impacts we can have. So this year, Wentworth Watersheds Association's theme is a combination of shoreline revegetation and septic maintenance. So this work with the septic ordinances that we've been working on, I head up Wolfeboro Water's Mitigation and Prevention Committee, courtesy of Rich Massey retiring. Thanks, Rich. He did a great job, but I've taken on the reins of that, and so we've been working on stormwater regulations. We helped with the stormwater regulation updates that went through the town a few years ago. So we're looking at long-range plannings that are advised out of the Watershed Management Plan update. I am sure there is a lot more to share. Please visit our new platform in the Brewster Heath Preserve. It is the emerald of our work at Wentworth Watershed Association, Brewster Heath Preserve, in partnership with Conservation Commission, conserves 111 acres just behind the high school on McManus Road. And we have 1.5 miles of interpretive trails that were all volunteer built. And Craig Garland, along with several volunteers, Craig spent 18 days leading volunteer groups to build that platform. And being able to stand on that platform and look into the Brewster Heath, which is the most incredible ecosystem right behind the school system, so that next generation understands the importance of the place they live and the beauty of the place and the ecological values. All the signs throughout it was a project for many years, and they're all aligned to New Hampshire educational curriculum standards, so that teachers can walk down there and know that they're hitting what they have to teach in their classrooms per grade in their science curriculum. It was very intentionally done. If you haven't been out there recreating, please do. When you put conservation and education together, whether it's community or formal education, that is how change is made. And my biggest ploy to you all is I feel like I'm a talking head sometimes. I'm up here saying the things, and my challenge to this community is not only that you take action on your property this year, this summer, do something to improve your property. Go outside, watch where the rain is falling. If it's running off your property, figure out how to make it go into the soil. And we can help you. So in the back table, Lenore has the sign, where Steve Johnson's standing, we have the Lake-Minded sign-up visits. We have an intern this summer who will be going out with Lenore and with Dan Ross, who heads up that program, and when needed, I'll be there too, to give you ideas. This is not a punitive, we are not evaluating, we are not calling the code enforcement officer, we are not calling DES, we are literally coming to be partners in helping you find affordable solutions or larger solutions if you're interested on how to protect the lake on your personal properties. So thank you for being here. I'm gonna stop talking now.
All right. So we've gotten, thanks to all the panelists here, and we've gotten a number of questions. I'm going to use the moderator's prerogative and assign them to somebody. But feel free, if anybody else has a better answer or a different spin on it, chime in after the person that I initially assigned this to. So question number 1 goes to Laura. And the question is, the levels of algae on the rocks in Wentworth and Gliatrichia, particularly in August, are significantly higher than Winnipesaukee. Is this inevitable? Will the programs described today address this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think who asked that talked to me during the break. So, yeah, so there was kind of 2 pieces to that. There was algae on the rocks and Gliatrichia. So I'm just going to split those out for a second. Yes, generally, we're seeing across the state in our lakes that some people are starting to feel like the rocks in the front of their property are getting slimier over time, like slippery, right? And feels like there's this thin film that maybe wasn't there a few decades ago, and now now they're feeling like something new is growing on it. Oftentimes that's actually a diatom, not necessarily a cyanobacteria, so it's an algae, but it is indicative of increasing nutrients in the water, and also warmer waters, so calm, warm waters, and especially with these clear lakes where there's a lot of light that are hitting all of those rocks, depending, right, how deep you're talking about going out. Yeah, you're going to start to have this growth on the rocks that will make it feel a little slipperier. Gliotrichia is something that does have a resting stage in the sediments, and when conditions are right, it'll pop off and you'll get these gliotrichia blooms and accumulations around the lake. Often we're seeing gliotrichia in our kind of better quality, lower nutrient lakes. They're kind of that first indication that your system is starting to get a little out of balance, whether it's, and obviously a combination of our influence on the landscape with increasing nutrients, and then the climate change that's kind of accelerating those processes. Yeah, gliotrichia is kind of this early warning sign for us, which obviously we're seeing in many of our lakes, including Lake Wentworth and Winnipesaukee as well.
Okay, I think we got that one covered. Okay, I'm going to give this one to Julie. How do we know that it's safe for us to swim in the lake?
You need to make your own informed decisions. There's tons of information, but definitely visit the Healthy Swimmer Mapper from DES, where if you report into them, they will come out and count samples, and that is the pathway right now. Wentworth Watershed Association often serves as a conduit for them, so we'll have our volunteers collect samples and they'll swing by our office. So when in doubt, stay out. If it looks gross, don't go in. Often there's other parts of the lake that are not receiving things, or other lakes that are not currently under a watch, but you all are informed users, and I think you just need to look before you leap. Keep your pets out of any sort of bloom that you think may or may not be present. Pets are the most vulnerable. Their livers can't process the toxins.
Just to add to that, this is my Wolfeboro Waters hat, let me put it that way. We're all in this. If you see, or first be informed what a bloom looks like, okay? But if you see it, report it. And when you report it, then through your association and communication, the word can get out about it, whether it's safe for your pet, safe to swim, how long, etc. But we all have to be observant, because it will happen.
Okay, well, actually, Dana, you can keep this, because I'm going to give, this is not really fair to Dana, because he doesn't know this is coming, but anyway, he's an engineer, right? So that's why he gets this one. So would implementing a city sewer system make a difference? Is that ball rolling? How can we help make this happen?
That's a big question.
Sorry, Dana.
No, it's okay. So there is a sewer system in Wolfeboro. They're one of the few on the lake that actually have one. It does not include the entire town, and they are extremely expensive to put in place. But what I would say is that if it fronts your property now or in the future, you should connect. And the cost of connection will partially be on the town and partially be on you, but I can guarantee you in the long run, connecting to that will be cheaper than properly maintaining a septic system, right? The town has trained operators at their wastewater treatment plant to handle the waste that comes in so that when it's discharged, it's clean enough to go back into the lake. I mean, that's certainly our hope. But, you know, I don't know that there are plans currently in place in Wolfeboro to expand the sewer system.
No, I think, years ago, I think there was an opportunity, many years ago, to connect to the Franklin Sewer Interceptor.
Yes.
And that was really expensive years ago, and it's really expensive now.
Yeah.
Many reallys in a row.
Yeah, just getting it there is expensive.
Yeah.
Right?
Recently, in the last year, help me out, Linda Murray, but at the end of Forest Road, at the end of Sewell Road and onto Forest Road, the sewer was extended, and those residents were required by town ordinance to connect. Whether they had a septic system that was in perfect shape or had just been installed, they had to connect to the sewer.
And if I could just add something really quick too, right? Certainly when you're installing a new system, you're containing the waste in a pipe. But I just want to make it clear too that when we have decades old infrastructure, right, you're never going to have like a perfect solution. And we do have old infrastructure for sewer lines throughout the watershed that in areas where there are known issues and breakouts and areas that we don't know, right, are leaking into our soils. So I think it's just as important to invest and upgrade the existing sewer infrastructure first before also, expanding outward. So.
Yep, great. Okay, this next one is for Julie. Are there resources available to help residents on camp roads evaluate the impact of their roads and recommended improvements?
Yes, there are. So if you did not come to our Camp Road maintenance workshop that we hosted a couple years ago, we had a really good in-person, we did an example site over on Hodge Road. They had a lot of issues they were dealing with there, so we did an example site with Rich Baldwin and Russ Lanoy. We have tons of resources on our website. We also have a Camp Road maintenance agent group that we're going to continue to work with, where people can do best practices, they can share what's happening. So we call them agents. Usually they call them the person on their road that was tapped to be in charge of their contract with whoever's maintaining the road. So we have lots of resources available, and as part of the Lake Minded program, we'd also be happy to come and walk and bring an expert with us to walk your road and give advice. So there's a lot of resources on our website and also through Wentworth Watershed Association.
Excellent. Okay, the next one's for Art. Is the Wolfeboro Waters Committee looking for any additional information on water quality of Back Bay? Is anyone looking at Back Bay at all in terms of water quality, I guess is the question.
So yes, there are two sampling sites for Back Bay, and it's currently monitored by the Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance. So they do the Smith River just before it crosses under 28, and then they also do Back Bay just before it goes under the Main Street bridge, and so they're monitoring that to see if there are impacts. Again, they just started doing this, so having 1 or 2 or 3 data points isn't enough. We need a few years of data to be able to assess, is a trend, is it going this way? Is it going, what's happening? And so that is underway, but the Wolfeboro Waters is not doing that particular area. It's already being done.
Yep, okay. And just to add to that, part of our program for at least the last 25 years is we wanted to evaluate what was coming out of Crescent Lake. So we have Smith River data right around Route 28 for about 25 years worth of data there. So we got a good indication what's going into Back Bay. We have a lot less indication what's coming out.
So one of the things that I will do is check with LWA to make sure that they have your data so that they can add on to that.
Good. Good. That's the importance of kind of having all the people together. We find out things about what others are doing. This one's for Laura. Can you talk about the runoff from the Kingswood Golf Course And is that addressed in our watershed plan?
Yeah, Kingswood Golf Course splits off into a couple different drainages. So we were also part of the Wolfeboro Bay Watershed Management Plan that was completed a year and a half ago. And then it's obviously part of the Lake Wentworth Crescent Lake Watershed as well. So it's actually in both plans. For the Wolfeboro Bay Watershed Management Plan, we did try reaching out to Kingswood Golf Course. I don't believe we actually ended up doing a site walk with them, but it's certainly in the plan to work with those folks. I will also mention too that from a broader Lake Winnie watershed perspective, so the Lake Winnipesaukee Alliance is wanting to engage more with golf courses throughout the watershed, which would include Kingswood and FBE, particularly Forrest Bell. He's an avid golfer himself, but we work a lot with golf courses and trying to get them Audubon certified so that they're using, friendly practices for aquatic life and really just all natural resources in general. So that is a goal of LWA to do that. So I'm sure that'll include Kingswood.
Okay. Laura, while you have the mic, and I'll help with this answer, but how many other lakes hit their goals as the Wentworth Watershed Association did for watershed planning?
That's a great question, and I can think of only one or two that have been this successful. So I just want to, emphasize that this is, this is a tremendous effort. It's not common to meet your goal within kind of the typical 10-year framework, right? Because even with all of the amazing efforts that you're doing, sometimes it feels like one step forward, two steps back, because the watershed's ever changing and there's new development, there's new threats, and then to actually be able to measure that change, which is relatively a small, right, decrease or increase in phosphorus, to actually have that statistically significant within just the variability of when you're collecting a sample and then how it's being analyzed at the lab. Like every step of that process, there's a margin of error, right? And then to actually be able to see that there was an improvement, it is extremely difficult. So yeah, pat yourself on the back again. Like this really is amazing.
Yeah, it's an exceedingly rare occurrence. I mean, a lot of watershed plans, people make a lot of progress, but it is very rare to meet the goal on the first shot. And that doesn't mean there isn't another goal. And in fact, we do have another goal. And the way that the Wentworth Watershed Association met it, or the Wentworth Watershed and Crescent Lake Watershed met it, was not through one big marquee project or even two big marquee projects, a bunch of little things. And I think I want to emphasize that there's a lot of little actions that have to happen. And as Julie said, everybody has something they can do on their property. And I think that collective effort has made a big difference in Lake Wentworth. And everybody involved in that deserves a big round of applause for that. Yeah.
So I want to add one thing to that. So these watershed plans that are done, they're a tool. And if they sit on a shelf and nobody looks at them, it's a useless tool. So it's on all of you to keep the pressure on the watershed associations to continue to look at those plans, update those plans, and implement the actions that are required, or at least laid out in those plans. So that's very important.
Yeah, very true. We just got to the starting line. When you do the plan, you're starting. Okay, I'm not sure who this one is appropriate for, but I'm just going to throw it out there, see if anyone has any insight. What is the status of town septic pumping inspection rules?
Again, I drew the short straw again, and I've been helping the town with my background. I've been helping the town with putting together these rules and narrative for septic system, at least in the on the shorefront properties, or the shoreline, is it the shorefront district? Shoreline zone to start, because they're the ones that are closest to the water. Right now it's in draft, it's not finalized. The town has a new planner who has now just weighed in on the draft, and so he has some really good points, and we're meeting with him in early July to kind of vet through that and hopefully get it into a final format. But the kind of the overall goal is to have septic systems inspected and pumped every 3 years. And if you've just had it done, then it gets recorded. But that's the goal in the shoreline district. Once that gets in place and gets rolling and is moving along at a good pace, then they'll expand that to other portions of the town. But right now, it's just the shoreline zone. But that's what it is. It's really a three-year program for inspection and pumping.
Great. That was a great answer. Okay, this one is, I'm going to throw this one out to everybody as well. Is anyone working with new homeowners and designers to teach best practices for lakefront development? Yeah, it's not for... Well, you can answer, Jason.
So that's where our watershed reps come in. We need our watershed reps to let us know when somebody's coming in and a new property owner's taken over, and we have a new homeowner packet that's given out through the Wentworth Watershed Association. And so the goal is the good neighbors bring them that information. Now, in terms of regulations, we do have a new town planner, and I've met with him, Dana's met with him. I'm sure a lot of the stakeholders in town have met with him, and he is really been on a good listening tour and understanding the priorities of town, and I have extreme optimism about his desire to protect water quality and really help us streamline our regulations. So I think he's going to be a good partner, and I think he's going to be watching construction projects, and he will hold people to the planning regulations, and I think he'll be of great support to the planning board and the zoning board. So to partnerships, having positive conversations with our town employees, I think is really important, because we've had a lot come and go, and we really need to retain the good ones we work to hire, and I feel like he's going to be a really good partner.
Yeah, on that point, I want to share a conversation I had with my neighbor about a week ago. She was pointing out some trees she was going to take out on her property, and they were dead. And she said, I still have to have a forester come in and say they're dead before I can do it. And I told her, I said, that's actually good, because there are people that will go in and clear cut their property before they build and say the trees were dead, when in fact, many of them weren't. But once they're down, there's not much you can do about it. So the idea, I was glad to hear the idea was that she was told by the town, you have to have somebody out certify that they're dead.
Okay, here's one for Julie, and then I have one more after this. Yeah, I know. Jason answered all the questions in his presentation. Or they're coming back for the August meeting. Okay, good. Can WWA sponsor an incentive program to assist and incentivize homeowners near the lakes to update their septic systems?
If you have a magic wand for funding, yes. Right now we're working really hard to meet our annual fund goals and specific project goals, and thanks to a lot of our members, we were able to purchase that mini dash boat. I think it's a project that's in the plans, and if we had a giant endowment that we could pull money for that type of incentive program, that would be amazing. So it could be in the plans for the future based on the update of the strategic plan. The board will meet in September to update our strategic plan and figure out where that is, and that's been on the list for a while. Other lake associations haven't had great luck with those programs, honestly. I've gone to listening tours. I think the fear of the project is usually more than the reality of the project. It would be great if the state started funding those projects. So it's a great idea.
Okay. So the last one, I'll start the answer, but others may have more input. Why are fireworks bad for the lakes?
Phosphorus.
Yeah. So there's all the things that make fireworks colorful are elements that aren't naturally, many of them are not naturally in our lakes. And by having fireworks over the top of the lake, dropping those elements into the lake, they get into the food chain, and those are things that are not, the food chain is not adapted to normally see. There's phosphorus in a lot of fireworks as well. And another thing that's a little less recognized is, you know, our loons and birds are used to a dark and quiet night. You know, the bangs, and it's pretty disruptive, particularly at a time when, you know, there's young nesting birds and things like that around our shorefront. So that's my 2 cents.
I would just add to that, pets, of course, we all know pets are affected by fireworks. My granddog is definitely affected by them. And so they'll go into a panic attack. It can last for a while, but so people also can be affected by fireworks.
And I can say that I'm part of the LLMP monitoring program for Alton Bay. And 2 years ago, we actually did sampling before and after the Alton Bay fireworks. And there was definitely an impact by the fireworks in the water quality in Alton Bay. So to Art's point, fireworks can have an impact. And so it's, as we've all said, it's these little pieces that we can eliminate that add up to making a big difference.
Right, right. And you know, maybe the interim solution is to have them over land. I don't know. I don't know.
I think the laser show is awesome, and I also think the drone shows are awesome, and I think the town's been looking towards that. And I think Brian Deshays, one of our Board of Selectmen, with his Lake Winnipesaukee Day that we've participated in, has really shown that the laser show can be cool. We just have to shift our mindset around what this holiday looks like. And I also really, Mary Schiller, if you're still here, I really want to say that we have to watch out for our vets who have PTSD for those sounds too. Like it's lake, it's community, it's wildlife, it's everything. And so I know fireworks have traditionally been a thing, but some traditions need to go away.
Okay, so now we have a couple minutes left. Do any of the panelists have questions for other panelists? And I see Dana.
So I know you already answered part of this question. And having been in the business and done developments that have bioretention areas that get put in place, the question always comes up, who maintains them? And what's the schedule for maintenance? So and I know you said that the state would be responsible for the maintenance of that, and that the town has expressed an interest to also be part of that. Will there be a maintenance and operations agreement between the state and the town for the 3 bioretention areas that you outlined in your 2 designs for 28?
Wonderful question. So yes, we do have a stormwater management plan across the state for all of our districts. And again, our Bureau of Environment Water Quality Program keeps tabs on all of the different BMPs throughout the state. And the specific maintenance cycle, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can certainly get back to everybody. Regarding the agreement between the community and the state, I believe it might be the first one, but I think with all of the different improvements or different revisions to the current agreements that we have expressed an interest in revising, I think it wouldn't be it would be a great opportunity to be able to do that. And it's been asked a couple times by multiple board members to have some type of agreement in place, and I don't see it a problem, to be honest with you. especially if we have the opportunity to revise the White Line Community agreement and then implement any other agreements. You know, we do propose landscaping within the corridor. That's not something that the department takes on. We'd be asking the community to take that responsibility on, and currently you do have responsibility on the sidewalk, so we'd want to increase that with the additional sidewalk lanes. So good question. It's something that we can work on this summer and have prepared following the public hearing and then for community review.
Okay, excellent. I think we have a question out here. No, it's not. It's not passé. It's still there, and there's still advisories out there by I think at Fish and Game for mercury content in fish. It's still being looked at. I don't think it's going anywhere soon. A lot of it's from airborne emissions, and it's a legacy that we're living with. Yeah, I mean, you can eat fish if you know. You need to read the advisory. I mean, most people can safely eat fish, you know, periodically, but not. It's not an everyday thing, and certain groups are dissuaded from eating any fish, freshwater fish.
And there's guidance.
Yes,
there is
guidance.
Published guidance on how
is.
often you should eat freshwater fish from the lakes. But it's never going away.
Any more questions? Seeing none, I'd like to really thank not only for being here today, all of our panelists, but also for the continuing work that they've been doing to help keep Wolfeboro what it is. And they all deserve a big round of applause for giving up part of their Saturday. And yeah, and I think I'll speak for Julie and Lenore. Take snacks with you. You know, go get more snacks and take them with you.
And if you feel like volunteering, you can help us clean up.
There you go. Thanks, folks.